Now, Taylor Adams put it all together with another solid performance, despite the loss on the weekend. Taylor, good morning to you.
Morning, Maisie.
Now, when a coach, or there's a succession plan announced at another club, do the players talk about it at all? Obviously, big news yesterday with Alistair Clarkson, who's going to move on at the end of next year. Does that get talked about internally? Are you like everyone else in society who just goes, oh hello, look at this?
Yeah, there was conversations had around the footy club yesterday. Obviously, it's a big story in the AFL landscape. A really successful coach being taken over by a really successful player from the same club. So, big story. Obviously, it doesn't really impact us too much, but it's I know Sam Mitchell's obviously a very highly regarded person in the coaching ranks, and there was no doubt it was a matter of time before he had his opportunity as a senior coach.
Well, he might have been at Collingwood if he'd gone through the process, but he said no. Now, on that as well, with when you're choosing a club, so you've been in the situation where you moved clubs. How important is the coach in your decision to move to that particular club? So, Bucks would have been in charge when you moved to Collingwood from the Giants. How important was he as part of that decision making process for you?
Yeah, clearly it's a big something that you really focus on when making the transition. Nathan was someone that I spoke to quite regularly during that decision-making period, along with all the other senior coaches at other clubs that I spoke to, and it definitely forms a large part of the decision-making process, along with a number of other things. But I think the senior coach dictates fairly most of what the football program is about and how it's going to be run. So, a massive part of making that decision.
So you were with Bucks basically the whole time you've been at Collingwood. That's right, isn't it? I'm right with those figures. So that has been, he's set those structures, he's done everything like that. You're going to experience a bit of a shift, which you've done over the last couple of weeks. How big is it for an athlete who has had the one coach, particularly someone like Alistair Clarkson and Nathan Buckley, who have big personalities and very strong in what they do? How much of a shift is that for you? Is that a tough thing to adjust to as a player?
Yes and no. I think individually players handle it differently. There hasn't been dramatic change at our football club. That might still be to come in terms of whether or not Robert Harvey gets the job next year, or they bring someone new in and who has a completely fresh take on it. So it's actually really hard to predict what it's going to be like, not knowing who is going to be the senior coach next year. Right now, obviously Harv's having the same coaching panel and same staff around him is limited in what he can change. And in the middle of the season, it's, change can be really disruptive. So, minor tweaks here and there. I spoke about this last time I was on the program. He's certainly got a different coaching style to Nathan, and that's shone through. And a few little tweaks in terms of our game plan, but day-to-day operations of how the football club are run haven't changed all that much. And I'm sure that if there was a new coach to come in, that would be the biggest change that you'd notice as a player.
He must have delivered the best three-quarter time speech of all time, Taylor. What did he say? Because that last quarter was extraordinary.
Yeah.
Can't remember.
I cannot remember for life. No.
What happened, mate?
No, clearly we were a very small chance of winning that game.
55, I think it got to.
Yeah.
When Ryder kicked the goals, 55.
Yeah. Yeah, so it was a good effort just by the team just to hang in there and stick it out. And obviously, we played some decent footy.
Do you know what I mean? What?
You look at the numbers and they tell a pretty obvious story. Contested ball and pressure.
Yeah.
We were absolutely smacked all day. St Kilda outworked us around the ball. They won more contests than us all over the ground and were able to hold territory. What changed in terms of mindset?
Because normally it goes the other way. It's like, 55, we're going to lose by 80. Put the cue in the rack, worry about next week. But you must have got a sniff of something, and then...
Yeah, we're not... I really don't think we're a team that's going to roll over and just give up. We changed a few things in terms of personnel and where they were playing. Got a little spike from that, but it come down to the basics really, being harder and stronger in the contest and being able to apply more pressure late in the game, and we're able to score off the back of that. I think we kicked 5 goals, 6 in the last quarter, which is probably our best return for the year in terms of over a 30-minute period. So first 3 quarters really disappointing, almost frustrating for that we come out and play like that in the last quarter, and we wasted. When we spoke about this yesterday, we basically wasted 90 minutes of an opportunity to play decent footy and improve, and that sort of sums up our season this year. We've been really inconsistent, up and down, and that's good football clubs and good football teams don't do that. They perform consistently and don't have those massive lulls.
With the transition of the ball too, which Jimmy Bartell spoke about with the Pies on the weekend. We think of that 2018 side and 19 where the ping off half back was amazing. You move the ball so quickly. How hard is that to flick the switch back to that? Because we think of Collingwood as such a free-flowing side. Your ball movement was unbelievable that year. What's changed in the couple of years since, or 20, 30 games since, where you seem a little bit more stagnant coming off the back line?
Yeah, well, the game's changed for sure. Teams are defending much differently. The best teams in 2018 were very much so front half, lock the ball in, own territory. Now the game's slowly changing to maybe defending more of your back half. So there's a lot of numbers behind the ball. Our game style in terms of our ball movement hasn't changed a whole lot in 2 years. We just haven't been able to execute as freely as we'd like to. When we actually did get the opportunity to move the ball on the weekend, we did it pretty freely and we did it well. But as I said before, we just weren't able to own territory and force the game into what we wanted to play, which is more contest and stoppage. And when we did get into that, they beat us. So we're sort of beaten by what we're known for and what we're good at, stoppage and contest, and their transition game, which is what they really like. Their mids outworked our mids, and high forwards and high backs probably outworked our high forwards and high backs, and they were able to get extra numbers to the contests, which made it really difficult, particularly in the first half. Made it difficult for us to even own territory or move the ball into our front half. So something that we looked at yesterday. I don't really think it was a ball use or ball movement issue. When we did get our opportunities, we were able to move it relatively freely.
Tay, it's an interesting one, because I'm sure anyone who's listening who plays sport at any level, sometimes you do things really well and sometimes you don't. And you kind of wonder at times, asking for a friend, why?
Yeah.
Why you talk about the numbers around the ball and the pressure that you were putting on just wasn't there in that first part of the game. And then it was in the last quarter. You found a way to make that happen. In your experience, you're a leader of this club. Why is that? Why is it that teams sometimes don't do those things, don't work hard enough, don't get the numbers around the ball, but occasionally they can do that? What do you think that is?
Oh, there's a number of factors that contribute to that. We're certainly a younger team than we have been, and that's inexperience probably creates inconsistency at times in terms of output. But that's that's no excuse for the way we perform, given that some of our poorer performers on the weekend were some of our senior players. So it's a
Is it a mental, physical, or does it combat?
Could be a combination of both. Yeah, it's a really hard question to answer by throwing a blanket over 23 players. I personally felt a little bit sluggish in the first 10, 15 minutes of the game. Coming second game back is always a little bit more difficult than the first. So there's a number of factors. Look, at the end of the day, we sat down after the game and said, if you're not prepared to put the work in and sacrifice and face the pain that sometimes it takes to perform well, then you just won't be picked to play. And it starts during the week where guys get the opportunity to work on their games and make sure that they walk out on a Saturday or Sunday and they're feeling good and they're ready to play well. And if you don't do that, then pressure from the bottom comes and you'll play in the VFL.
In that regard, you never really hear players or teams say, geez, we've had a pretty average week on the track, or geez, we haven't been as good at training. Even though you probably won't publicly admit it, can you feel it when there are some weeks where you're like, we just weren't quite as sharp as we were during the week, or we're a bit 5% off here, 5% off there? Can you feel that at training some weeks going into a game?
Not really. You know, there's obvious weeks where we train really, really well as a group, but sometimes doesn't correlate to game day. Yeah. And then there's some weeks where we don't train as well, and then we go out and perform really well. So it's, you know, I think it's more the focus on preparing really, really well in every opportunity that you get, whether that's in the gym, doing your injury prevention, doing your touch sessions, clearly out on the track's a really important part of our week. It is really hard, and we spoke about that as well, just not leaving anything to chance. You know, the best players in any sport around the world, or best performers in any sport around the world, they just don't leave it to chance. They dot every I and cross every T and tick every box in their pursuit to be great on the weekend. And we spoke about making sure that our week leading into the game is elite in every aspect, and that's something that we've got to instill into our younger players, and that we've got to continue as senior players, that when we're not going as well as we'd like to, we don't drop the ball, and you don't cut corners. And I'm not saying that we've been doing that, but it's just a sharp reminder that it's a competitive environment, and if you don't come out to perform, then you'll be down by 55 points. And you'll be chasing tail. Because
it's a tough part of the year. It's the grind anyway. And now you've got the grind with the fact you're not going to play finals. So to have that motivation, there will be players who are probably playing for their career, or there's young kids who have got a chance to make a name for themselves. Yes, you're not sure about who's coach, but it is a tough gig for your group. And as a senior player, I gather you've got to be pretty hypersensitive of that.
Yeah, absolutely. There is certainly different motivating factors for each individual. It's our job to ensure that the team is motivated, and then it's up to the individual to work out what motivates them and to put the work in. Come to the football club every day and get better. There's still so much for us to get out of this year. As you said, we've got a lot of young players that are playing senior football. What a great opportunity for them. We've got some really quality opposition coming up in the next couple of weeks. Starting with Richmond this week. Awesome opportunity to sort of right the wrongs and turn the ship a little bit. We're trying to take it week by week, not looking forward to the last 7 rounds now. As soon as you start projecting that, you sort of take your mind off and you focus off what really is important, and that's getting through training every day and making the most of it. So we also spoke about that yesterday. We think our group's been really good at that. It's just a matter of finding things that for each individual that keep them going and making sure that, as I said before, there's no corners cut.
Taylor Adams is with us in the Inner Sanctum this morning, Collingwood midfielder and vice-captain. On Jordan Goey, any chance we can clone him? Because, when he goes into the midfield, he's had 32 the last couple of weeks, 24 a couple of weeks previous to that. He's a weapon wherever he plays. Where do you think he's most valuable?
I think for Geordie to reach his potential, he has to be a midfielder. I think that the way he played on the weekend, he had 3 scoring shots, number of clearances, transitioned really, really well, ran really, really hard in the midfield, and just giving him the opportunity to play through the midfield, and then if he needs a rest or wants some time forward, then giving him the opportunity to choose to do that. So he's had that license over the last couple of weeks, and clearly performed really well, but it's off the back of work rate, and he's put in extra sessions behind the scenes. So training really well, and worked really hard on his game over the last 8 weeks or so, and he's certainly seen the rewards for that. So we hope that can continue for Geordie.
What about you, Taylor? I think last time you were in the studio here, you were going off and playing your first game for a few weeks, being back on the field for a couple of weeks. You'd have to be happy with the way you've performed.
Yeah, I am. Yeah, it's been obviously it's been nice just to be out there, and feeling really good in my body. the first game back against Fremantle last week, I was really anxious, excuse me, and nervous about how my body would hold up, given that I had that second injury last time I played, and I felt really good going out there for that game. So that was a testing week for me personally. A lot of nervous energy throughout the week, but was really happy to get through. I think I'm playing decent football at the moment. And that's been a learning experience for me. The work that I put in rehab and behind the scenes with, our rehab coordinator Dino. I've been really appreciative of his support. I had some good training partners. Levi Greenwood was one who was training in rehab with me and Jeremy Howe. So, I think it's a lesson for even for some of our younger players. You can make gains in rehab, and it's not a time to just twiddle your thumbs and get back to playing football. But my goal was to get back and play well. So, I am happy. Sherelle?
Well, that's good. But it is an interesting one too, that mental battle that you face when you're going through rehab. Particularly, you've had some bad luck over the last couple of years and the time that you've spent on the sideline. How do you get over that mental kind of hurdle to think, God, last time I felt good and it didn't go well? Yeah. Are there things you put in place to try and make sure that you feel good physically, but how do you get over that last mental hurdle?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question because as I said, I felt really, really good physically. Trained our last training session, walked off the track and went straight to the doc's office and said, I don't know if I'm ready to go. And they looked at me like I had two heads. Because they're like,
hear that from you much.
We just watch you train. And, and you looked completely fine. There was nothing that they could pick up. There's nothing in terms of the structure. We'd given it plenty of time to recover. But mentally, I just had this little man on my shoulder saying, you're probably not right, don't risk it. And I said to the doc, well, we're going to get to this time next week, and I'm probably going to have the same conversation with you where I think I'm not ready. So in the end, we made the decision that I was going to play. And that sort of, once I made that decision, it was sort of like, all right, whatever happens, happens. And if I go out there and re-injure it, then so be it. Deal with it then. As it goes, I went out there and played well and felt good, and the rest is history. I felt I didn't have that second thought going into the second week, and I felt really positive about it. So there's certainly that mental aspect that you have to overcome as an athlete.
Scotty, it makes that the performance over the last couple of weeks even more impressive, doesn't it? knowing that's one of the challenges going in. Yeah.
Because will you need anything at the end of the season again, or is it?
Hopefully not. No. Yeah, it should be. Should all be healed up well and truly by then. So. Hopefully no surgery required to repair anything.
So in a perfect doctor's world, you wouldn't be playing, but you can play, if that makes sense.
No, right now my knee's structurally fine, more than sound. I think it takes, and I said this, and it kind of come back to bite me on the bum a few weeks ago.
Say it again.
For the knee to fully heal, so it's back to the same strength as my right. It might take 15 weeks, but to play and be in a safe space to play, it only needs 5 or 6. Yeah. And that came back to haunt me, that one. But but yeah, most players would be running out there clearly not 100%. Well, I'd say 99% of players wouldn't be running out there. Not 100%. So yeah,
you would have been asked about Nathan Buckley a hell of a lot over the last 6 months. I'm going to ask a different question about him today.
Where is he?
There's a spare job. Well, there's a spare job. I'm sure he's enjoying some time off and have probably a few sleep-ins. There's a spare job at AFL House going as football operations manager. Now, he speaks
talk about
so
jumping
well.
Back in the furnace.
Well, maybe. I'm not sure. But is that something you could see potentially Bucks doing? Because from the outsider's perspective, I don't even support Collingwood, but he would be fantastic, I think, in that role. What do you think you could see him in something like that, or do you reckon he might maybe step back into the footy world in clubland?
What a question. I think he could almost fit any role with his experience in the game. Obviously, the way that he holds himself and carries himself is super impressive. That job at AFL House, are you alluding to Steve Hocking's?
Yes.
Mate, I'm not even too sure what that role entails, other than
doing crazy
bringing in the sub rule.
Yes.
Mucking the game up.
Stand on the mark rule.
No,